Today I want to discuss a Fire Emblem character who is truly an unsung hero. Kellam, oft forgotten, is a knight from Fire Emblem Awakening. He's a member of Crom's Shepherds, and he's mostly played up as a gag cast member, as other characters forget he exists, and they treat him as invisible despite his really bulky armor. Hello? Hi? I'm right here. Sorry, just felt like you were looking through me. I replayed Awakening late last year for the first time in a really long time, and Kellam had been totally uninteresting to me until I replayed, but I was pleasantly surprised at his characterization upon revisiting. I did use him as a marriage pair option, and he was in my regular unit rotation until I replaced all of the parents with the children units. Watch my Awakening video and it'll make more sense if all of this is gibberish to you. Romance, marriage, children, etc. are all integral to the mechanics of that game. I think Kellam lives up to his stupid joke in-game being forgotten by the characters in-universe, but also by the fandom. His shoulder is in the Shepherd's intro cutscene before panning away to everybody else. Crom hasn't noticed that Kellam is traveling with the group until the chapter he becomes playable. Kellam is included in more than one piece of key marketing artwork, and in both versions he is intentionally behind someone. Intelligent Systems said, "This is Kellam's role, and we are going to lean in." Kellam stands are few and far between. He's only in Heroes as a special Halloween unit. Oh my god, also, have you heard of the Fire Emblem Heroes Pass? Like, instead of the normal gacha model, you can just pay for like a monthly subscription service, so instead of dumping a bunch of money, it's just like a flat rate, like Fortnite. That's crazy. The free-to-play model actually needs to be stopped, because it's not free to play. There's no such thing as a free lunch. It's free for someone like myself. I don't play Heroes, I think the game is stupid, but it's free for someone like me because single individuals are basically willing to pay for the whole table at the restaurant. Does that make sense? That's why I don't like the free-to-play model, because it's free to play for me on somebody else's dime, and that doesn't make me feel good. Anyways, back to the topic at hand. Big, burly muscle man. So who is he? Kellam doesn't necessarily have a standout personality. He and Stahl are practically interchangeable as characters, IMO. Both of them fulfill the role of normal guy, and even in their own conversations, they're spending a lot of time being each other's understudy. It's an interesting dynamic where they're both like, I'm average. I'm so average, and you're a little bit better than me. And the other one's like, no, I'm average, actually. I'll discuss side content later, but in terms of the main storyline, Kellam gets pretty similar treatment compared to most side characters in any FE title. After his introduction, he's still in the game, but he doesn't have very many contributions to the main plotline. We know he joined Crom's Shepherds before the start of the story. He travels north with the party for the first few chapters, and then he's recruitable in chapter 3. Recruitable. He's not mandatory, so you can still miss him. It's my supposition that if you don't recruit Kellam in chapter 3, he is still with the party, just no one can see him. And you can't tell me I'm wrong. He's just in the whole game, lurking in the background, and you wouldn't know a thing. I've read in some forums that if you don't recruit Kellam, you can actually see him in the background of the last scene where Crom and Lissa wake Robin up. He's in the background. You only see his boot in the grass, but he's there. I haven't seen this. I haven't verified it for myself, but you guys should try it. In terms of design, I like Kellam a lot. I already enjoy the default knight design from Awakening. I think they look really cool anyways, but the orange accents make Kellam stand out a lot more. I think the quarter spheres on the shoulder piece are cool. I feel like in a more futuristic game, or in that banner of Heroes where the characters are basically high fantasy versions of Diva from Overwatch, those would open up and they'd be little rockets and Kellam could fly around. There's obviously supposed to be some sort of irony in how Kellam is the tallest member and he's wearing ginormous armor, but he's often invisible and goes unnoticed by people he's close with. Very little can be gleaned about him from what he's wearing underneath the armor, especially compared to how Frederick is dressed underneath his heavy armor. Like, you can still see a collared shirt with a skinny little bow tie. It definitely gives the impression that someone like Frederick may serve the royal family in a butler-like capacity during their downtime, but Kellam is wearing black head to toe, like he just got back from the ski lodge. He's not wearing like a beige color or something that is more accessible to a commoner like himself. It tells us nothing, and I think that's very intentional. We only see his head, which looks kind of small as it's being swallowed up by this imposing armor set. I do think his expression and how he's drawn tells us a lot about the character. He has a perfectly unremarkable bowl cut, closed eyes, the slightly downturned mouth and eyebrows. All of this gives the impression of someone who's quite shy, or at the very least, like quiet and reserved, that type of demeanor. He has a single piece of released concept art, which is just a bust. This earlier version of Kellam is very much older Chad type. The jawline is lethal, and there's a little bit of gauntness in the cheek that makes him seem slightly older, especially compared to his final version, which is rounder and quite plump by comparison. The middle part seems more classically heroic. There's a perfectionist vibe to the prettier hairstyle that I'm sure is like effortless, and he doesn't have to style. He just wakes up and he's hot to go. His eyes are still closed. That was basically the only thing that was maintained visually, but his eyebrows and smile line are much more relaxed. It makes him seem like more of a self-assured type. Because he also looks a bit older, it gives the impression that he may have more battlefield experience too. I think this design makes sense for a different FE game, and they probably wanted to change it because it bears a lot of similarity to Gregor, at least in like the strong jaw masculine department. I also think Awakening generally wanted the cast to read on the younger side. Most of the cast ranges from middle school to college age in terms of appearance, at least. So I do think this draft feels a bit old. It's also very generic. I think the final design makes more sense to give the impression of a ragtag group of inexperienced soldiers, especially. There are a lot of characters in that party who have come up from nothing. So it makes sense that there are multiple characters on the roster who are scared or inexperienced. The final design is good. I've already said that I liked it, but I did notice an inconsistency between the official published art versus how Kellam looks everywhere else. His 3D model in-game comparatively looks the most similar to the official art, but obviously it's a teeny little 3D guy that's on a small screen, so I don't want to get too hung up on the differences there. But the portrait art is different, and you'd think they would be the same. First of all, in the official art, his armor has nipples, and it's strange for multiple reasons. Like, usually bare-chested men drawn in an anime art style tend to not have nipples at all. They're omitted from the record. And also, armor with nipples is recorded in history to have existed. It's just not common, and it's not really what pops up in your head, especially when you think of European medieval fantasy armor. His in-game portrait, I don't know how to describe that shape. It's not almond, it's not seed. Like, he has very puffy armor nipples. It's something that I didn't notice, but it just stands out to me so much more now that he has these like really big pieces protecting his nipples. In his in-game portrait, the graded armor that goes around his head is more flush with the shoulder piece, probably to avoid blocking his face too much. Also, for whatever reason, the chin piece is slightly different. In the official artwork, there's two curved imprints on the corners, whereas in his portrait art, those two curves meet in the middle and have a more pronounced protrusion. There's also a large middle piece that separates his armor abs. That doesn't exist in the official art. Does any of this matter? Not necessarily, but it's interesting to ponder why these changes exist in the first place. Like, why publish this as the official art when a different design is going to be used in-game, in his confession art, in promotional materials, in the cipher cards? This design doesn't exist anywhere else. I was so skeptical that I checked my copy of the art book just because I was like, am I crazy? Wikis have lied to me before. I now double check all of my sources because sometimes somebody writes something somewhere and then you can't verify where it came from. But no, that's the official art that's published in this book. I checked out a couple other characters too, and they all seem to consistently be drawn on model. So it's interesting. I didn't do an exhaustive look. I didn't look at every single character, but I picked a couple and they all checked out. So I'm like, what happened with Kellam? Yusuke Kozaki, what's going on? There are two other pieces of art that I would like to refer to just because they show Kellam without armor. The first is this piece from Kozaki's Twitter. Yusuke Kozaki has done character design for many Fire Emblem games, his main works being Awakening and Fates. He tweeted this artwork of Kellam in 2017. It's just him, muscle-bound, smiling. You get a better sense of his physique just in general. It also highlights how beat up he is from battling. We see him with visible scars in this image. He's also wearing a more casual chainmail t-shirt, definitely an off-duty look. Just interesting to tweet 4 or 5 years after the game came out. Kellam was also added to Heroes within the last year as a special Halloween unit, which in general is wild because he's not a character that gets a lot of attention. Also, the people who funded Heroes into becoming a billion-dollar game aren't necessarily interested in Kellam, even though compared to the woman in that game, he does have a comparable bust size. I appreciate the humor behind the idea. He's invisible, he's easy to scare people, and it's a trope that's used over and over again in Awakening, so it makes sense. The only other art I want to highlight is this card from Cypher, which is the defunct card game. This is the actual card with Kellam in the general class, and it has an alt where he's just not in it. Someone came up with that idea, and a boardroom full of people said, yep, print that. As I've mentioned, Kellam is a knight, which in Fire Emblem is a specific slow, heavily armored type of unit with low mobility and high defenses. I think Kellam is a good unit. He's not superb, but he's not awful. He's one of only 2 knights that you can get in the game, but Kellam is the only unit who can promote into general from his base class that you would get if you're ignoring the marriage component completely. He also joins in a really early chapter, so he's a good defensive option that's going to be available to you for almost the entirety of a playthrough. Kellam also works well as a pair-up option just because he gives +4 defense to any person he's paired with. There's a lot of debate as to whether or not Kellam is a good unit, and whenever I see that, I usually take it as a sign that the unit isn't good all the time. Some people who have better luck with RNG on a level up might have an easier time with the unit compared to others who don't get as many stat bonuses upon level up. His reclassing options are pretty cool. He's not necessarily useful in those classes, but they're cool. He can switch into either Thief or Priest. His access to Thief is a clever nod to him going unnoticed. I don't think Priest has any sort of lore reason, but maybe we'll discover one along the way. Kellam as a Priest doesn't really make sense. He's bad at magic, and being in a magic class isn't gonna fix that unless you beat the odds and happen to get a magic growth every single level up. But even still, he starts with 0 magic. He is gonna get some magic by switching into the Priest class, but you're still pulling him up from nothing. There is an interesting build, this isn't specific to Kellam, where you can give a unit heal touch from Priest, which adds 5 to any healing, and then give them tome fare from Sage, which gives a +5 to magic when a tome is equipped, which works because technically staves and awakening aren't equipable. So logically it makes sense as an exploit, but I haven't tried this in awakening myself. So it makes sense on paper, but I'm not 100% sure that it works like that. You can bolster Kellam's healing in this way, but again, why would you want to? Miracle, which lets him survive with 1 HP in the event that he's hit by magic, which knights are more vulnerable to because they have less resistance, and Renewal, which covers 30% HP at the start of every turn, are the more useful skills from this class line. The Thief line doesn't just make sense for Kellam in a narrative sense, but they also offer surprising utility. Because he already has high defense and HP, he's a lot bulkier than other Thieves you have access to, and the class does help out his pretty low speed. Besides being able to open doors and chests, the Thief line offers several movement skills. Move +1 makes up for Knight's low movement range, Acrobat from Trickster lets a unit ignore difficult terrain, and Pass from Assassin lets a unit walk through enemies, which is cool if you're going to go all in on Thief for Kellam, but if you want to do some sort of hybrid build and keep him in a more defensive class, it doesn't make much sense for him to want to walk through enemies. It might have a niche use case, but usually you're going to want him to defend other units, so getting behind enemy lines is not as necessary. And then from the Knight class lines, like Luna is a really good offensive skill, and he's one of few characters who gets access to the defensive skills Aegis and Pavis. No, one of those is from Paladin. I'm a liar. Oh, thank God I remembered that. I think General gets Aegis. I'm stupid. Cancel me. Now we can move on to supports. Supports are the social sim element of Fire Emblem. Characters get little hearts when they fight next to each other. These heart points add up towards unlocking a conversation between those two characters, which usually don't impact the plot in any way, but it serves to develop the relationship between those characters. The weather's been so bad today. Like, I know it was sunny when I started filming, but now it's cloudy and overcast again. Sorry if the lighting's crazy. In many earlier FE titles, this is an invisible system that you're not really aware of until the conversation becomes available. You also have to see these conversations during combat, but in modern FE, support conversations happen back at the camp between fights. Awakening's main conceit relies really heavily on supports. So much of the game is playing matchmaker and pairing up your cast so that they can have children. Due to time travel shenanigans, the children characters are pretty much the same age as our main cast, maybe a little bit younger, but generally they have greater potential to be stronger than a lot of the parent characters, which is why they're so important from a gameplay perspective. When I make videos like this, I have to do a lot of reading. I have to sift through a lot of really menial lines of dialogue. So if you're enjoying this so far, feel free to like, feel free to subscribe. Tipping options are in the description. I've started a Patreon. If you want to go support over there, that would be very nice of you. A general through line in all of these discussions: Kellam is invisible. He startles people. They can't really see him. It feels like he's coming out of nowhere. Also, he gives the impression that he thinks he's ugly. He lacks confidence. His support with Robin is literally just about him being invisible. Lissa makes him pies, although a discrepancy comes up here because in certain proposals, his mom makes the ring that he uses to propose, and in other ones he makes it himself. In Lissa's, his mom gave him the ring. Is there a reason for this difference to exist? I don't know, but beauty's in the eye of the beholder, I guess. In his support conversations with Sully, and we'll see this get reiterated a couple times, she gets mad at him because he was secretly watching her back. He is like, no, I was just fighting with you. But she's like, I just don't want your protection. I can handle myself. That's the C rank. In the B rank, he protects Sully again, hurting his arm in the process. She's annoyed that he protected her because she was able to handle herself, so he got hurt unnecessarily. She expresses a certain amount of surprise because Kellam usually presents as very meek, but when it comes to putting himself in danger in front of others, he's very stubborn because Sully wants him to stop and he refuses. In the A rank, it's a very similar interaction, but in this instance, Kellam stepped in at the right time because Sully was going to get hurt, so this time she thanks him and suggests that they keep working together. She says that someone needs to keep an eye out for him because he's keeping an eye out for everybody, so they come to a mutual understanding. His supports with Stahl are so interesting. In the C rank, Stahl has been looking for Kellam, and Kellam's been like in the same room as him for like half an hour. Stahl expresses that he gets very nervous on the battlefield, and he asks Kellam how he maintains his composure, but Kellam is like, I also get nervous. I'm very afraid. Stahl doesn't believe him and talks about how stoic Kellam looks on the battlefield, like he's ready for anything. And then Kellam is like, oh no, if you can see me while we're out there, I'm not doing good enough. I'm doing something wrong. And then he runs away. Stahl is disappointed because Kellam has walked off without really helping his nervousness. In the B rank, Stahl tries to continue this conversation and admits that he's not just like a little bit nervous and panicked. He's very afraid when they're fighting. So he's decided he's going to follow Kellam around and copy his whole daily routine. Direct quote, the most meticulous study one man has ever done to another. And if Stahl thinks copying a daily routine is meticulous, I have some stories that would put him in the ground. Kellam is like, maybe you should model yourself after Frederick. He's really great. But Stahl is like, no, it has to be you, Kellam. It's always been you, because their personalities are so similar. He also makes a jab at Kellam being uglier. And it's like, maybe we didn't need to say that. In the A rank, Stahl has a much easier time finding Kellam now in the camp out in the world, and he compliments him for how he accepts his fear in battle because it makes him a much better warrior. Stahl admires his confidence and wants to take that away for himself, and Kellam feels seen and appreciates the compliment. Muriel, woman in STEM, she always wants to study the other characters' stupid quirks because that's her stupid quirk. So she wants to know why Kellam is such an enigma. Compared to a lot of supports in Awakening, generally there isn't flirting. It's like a silly little convo, and then randomly the game is like, they are ready to wed, holy matrimony, call the priest, ring the bell, they're gonna have a baby tonight. But usually it's like platonic at best, ambivalent at worst. But Muriel flirts a little. Because Kellam is invisible, she needs to keep an eye on him, so she holds his arm when they're walking around, and she insinuates a little bit later, like, I could get used to this. Can I hold your arm a little bit more? Does she figure out why Kellam's invisible? No, she drops it. She's horny. She doesn't care. In his C rank with Maribel, she's annoyed that he never takes the armor off and complains that he even wore it to a wedding. In their B rank, she buys him silk clothing and then poor shames him for being a commoner. Slay. He thanks her, but he also explains that he was really struggling when he first joined the army and he wanted to quit initially, but then his whole village pooled in a bunch of money in order to buy this armor set that's slightly too big for him, but he still cherishes it nonetheless. And that's really sweet. Also, he's now technically serving the royal family, so he's done pretty well for himself. After hearing out his backstory, Maribel apologizes. In their A rank, they compliment each other after fighting side by side. Maribel says she's inspired by Kellam's rise from poverty into hero. He says he comes from a humble farming family and can't really dream of being anything bigger. And Maribel says that she wants to be a judge advocate, which is basically a military lawyer, and that she would be the first woman in the country to have this role. She also encourages Kellam to dream a little bit bigger because he's come very far on a difficult path. And then in their S rank, Kellam proposes the lady and the stable boy, and he's like, I don't really have much of a dream, but you want to be the first woman to go to law school? I would love to help you do that. And that's feminism. He's an ally, loves women. He's a little nervous about being a commoner, but she's like, we'll get you a title, just don't wear armor to the wedding. That's all I ask. In his support conversations with Pan, he invites her to come spar in the training grounds on the camp. She initially says no, because she doesn't fight for fun, she fights to kill. And Kellam is like, okay, kill me, do it then. And she's like, I'm gonna eat your heart. And he's like, okay. That's verbatim how it went. Pan is really powerful, but Kellam is very defensive, so they end up being an interesting match for each other. Spoiler alert, Pan doesn't kill him. In their A rank, Pan hurts him very badly, but she treats him after the fight because she noticed that he wasn't even really trying. She also sussed out that Kellam asked her to spar in the first place because it gets a lot of attention from the camp. Like, it pulls in a big crowd, and Kellam is like, yeah, I want you to like socialize with the people who live here. Since you're gonna be living with us, for this war. You should get along with people. Pan is also one of few characters who can tell where Kellam is without the invisible nonsense. Sully doesn't have like a lore reason. She just can. But Pan can detect his scent because she's a rabbit woman. In this proposal, Kellam makes the ring himself. In his support string with Noe, he reveals that he has 5 brothers. He came from a very boisterous household. He was very mean. He didn't like to share with his brothers. And then his entire family started ignoring him, which is why he thinks he's really good at going unnoticed. That's his tragic backstory, is that his family hates him. Besides that, they do the sister brother thing where Kellam is like, I never had a sister. And there's an age play element because Noe is a child, but 1,000 years old because lore. So she is infantilized, but she's like, I'm the older sister. And then they play hide and seek together. And then Kellam in the proposal scene is like looking at a ring and she's like, are you going to propose to your sister or not? And he's like, yeah, I am going to propose. What a fun angle. POV, you marry your sister. POV, you establish a sibling dynamic in order to flirt and get close to someone. Moving on, in his support with Tharia, they're both sending letters to their families. In the B rank, Tharia gets a letter back from her family, but Kellam hasn't heard back from his family yet, so Tharia offers to use her magic to track them down. By the time their A rank occurs, she has found Kellam's family in a refugee camp. They were displaced as a result of the war. Kellam gets a letter back from his brother, revealing that he's an uncle. With Olivia, in their C rank support, Olivia is asking for advice because she feels useless and thinks her dancing isn't enough. Kellam asks if she can cook, and she says she knows how to make dessert. And Kellam is like, you should do that. Everyone likes dessert. Olivia then says, you're pretty smart for a tree. Thanks for listening. Because she was standing by a tree and she thought the tree was giving her advice. The invisibility thing is stupid, but this made me laugh. I laughed out loud just because I wasn't expecting it. It's probably because this interaction is a crafted joke and the joke isn't just like, whoa, nobody notices him. Like, it's actually comedic. Oh my God, Cherche is another character who is flirting. They don't just have silly little chats. She's making moves. In their C rank, Cherche is heading to town. Kellam asks her to take a pair of trousers to a tailor, but she offers to mend them herself because she sews.
Did you sew that?
Kellam thanks her and she's like, I'm surprised a cute guy like you doesn't have a girl to do this for you. And Kellam is shocked to his core that someone called him cute. And Cherche keeps calling him cute. His armor is adorable. In their A rank, Kellam offers to go to the market on Cherche's behalf because he can tell that she's sick. She thanks him and then she says that she wants to spend more time with him later on. Again, they're flirting. The S rank proposal makes sense because it comes from somewhere. In his supports with Donald, they talk about coming from farming families and they plant bilberry bushes together. Oh, also, I didn't talk about the child characters just because those conversations are generic and they don't change depending on the father. So one might be able to glean extra meaning from them in relation to Kellam, but they're not specific to Kellam and they're not the greatest. So I don't care. They later added 3 DLC chapters that basically exist to include more conversations between characters. In one chapter, the cast has conversations with characters that they're already able to build support conversations with. In the other chapter, they have unique conversations with characters who they don't interact with. In the Harvest Scramble, which is so specific because in Heroes, he's a Harvest unit. Was that callback in Heroes on purpose? Probably not, but it exists nonetheless. His convos are with Stahl and Donald. With Stahl, they just talk about what they're good at and they have like a humble competition. They keep insisting that the other guy is better and it's like, okay, are you gonna explore each other's bodies or no? Like, why are we still talking? You guys are obsessed with each other. With Donald, Kellam asks him why he wears a pot on his head and Donald initially is like, it's my emotional support pot, which is me anytime I'm at the dispensary. It doesn't actually have meaning to him. Donald just has fried hair and he wears it like a hat. Very Wizards of Waverly Place, we see right through your funky hat coded. In Summer Scramble, his conversations are with Frederick and Henry. Summer Scramble is the equivalent to an Anime Beach episode. Frederick is another character who can see Kellam, none of the invisibility nonsense. Frederick compliments Kellam on being one of the better, more competent soldiers in the army. Kellam is humble and insecure, so he's taken aback once more. Cherche thinks he's cute. Frederick thinks he's good at his job. He struggles to take the compliment with grace. A random soldier comes along and is like, someone stole all the swimsuits. We need to catch the thief. And then Kellam manages to do this with ease because the thief couldn't see him. So his invisibility was very useful to securing the swimsuits. And Frederick is grateful for that. He has a really odd interaction with Henry. In the Summer Scramble conversations I've read, they're unhinged. Probably because they're like not canon or whatever. The writers were like, we can just do whatever we want. Kellam reveals he has bad eyesight. Maybe that's why his eyes are closed. Henry ends up squeezing into Kellam's armor with him. Trapped proximity trope. Whoa. Henry also says this random thing about being raised by wolves. I didn't use him in my most recent playthrough, so I don't know much about the character, TBH. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But he was like, I don't know social cues. I don't know anything about warmth and affection. And then he climbs out of the armor suit, and Kellam is like, I think he knows a little bit about warmth and affection. And then Henry turns around and he was like, what was that? And Kellam was like, nothing. I guess he got too close in the armor suit. Just a little homoeroticism to cap off the video. It's June, and that's Kellam in the deep dive nobody asked for. In all of his endings, he is lost to history. His name is not recorded in the books. Nobody knows who he is. His title is oft forgotten. He is an enigma lost to time, a reminder of how our lives are temporary. And I guess the real friends weren't even the ones we made along the way because they didn't put us in the books. That's bleak. Anyways, subscribe. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching. I know a lot of people tune into me for FE related content. Is there a character you'd like to hear me talk about? I feel like if you've watched a lot of my content, you know that I love to look at a side character and make a mountain out of a molehill. It's a more exciting creative exercise. Is there another character you want me to talk about? What Fire Emblem game is your favorite? Are you a Kellam stan? Are you a Kellam hater? Surprisingly, a divisive character. A lot of people don't like the invisible, innocuous gag joke, and I understand why. It's stupid and annoying. So where do you stand on the debate? Who did you pair Kellam with, if at all? In my most recent game, I paired him with Pan, and I think they're a solid couple. But yeah, that's it. That's all. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.